whoever is able to nail that, something like cars or houses or these things that are very bureaucratic and take a lot of time to transact. And I think that's like the real opportunity here for that technology and really for governments as well. And in a time when things are so uncertain about the global economy, like if I was government, like that's where I want to be focusing on right now.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Real Vision. I am Sergio Silva, sitting in for Raul Pal on Adventures to Crypto. But fear not, I have somebody with a British accent with us today to fill in for that part. Very excited to talk today to OSF, Ovie, who's an artist, collector, creator, and former TradFi trader. Hey, Ovie, how are you today, man?
Hey, Sergio. Yeah, I'm doing well, thanks. It's an absolute pleasure to be on here.
Awesome. Pretty excited about this conversation. We've been colleagues, friends for a while now, so it's great for Real Vision and the audience to get to know you a little better. I think your career has been one of the most, I guess, significant in the space, given the many different hats that you've been wearing over the last 18 months. So I would love to start with, getting a bit of your background. We were both at a British bank before jumping into NFTs. What was that discovery process for you like?
For those of you who don't know, I worked for 10 years actually at Barclays Bank as a trader. I spent I think almost 6 years in London, and I spent 3 years in New York, and I traded high yield and distressed credit, which, as we'll get on today, it was very similar style of trading to NFTs. But yeah, I first heard of crypto in 2017, but I was a crypto skeptic for many years. I think in the role that I was in, it was always focused on analyzing things from like a bottom-up perspective and trying to get to evaluation based on calculations or ideas or forecast projections. So I was very much like a value-orientated person, and I could just never really get my head around crypto. So I was a crypto skeptic for many years. And at the beginning of 2021, the inflation idea and theme started to play into effect. Something that I had definitely had a very strong view of, and I also had a strong view that we wouldn't see any interest rate hikes anytime soon. So it was just like, how do I wasn't making any money in my personal investments. Like, what do I invest in to actually like get some real bang for my buck with this kind of like low interest rate inflation narrative? And obviously, when you do your research, you come across Bitcoin again. So I took the time to learn about Bitcoin again for probably like the fifth or sixth time, and I think I just about finally got my head around it. So I stepped into Bitcoin. I stepped into Ether in January 21, which is the first time I ever touched crypto. And a colleague of mine who was also Mando, who I partner up with now, and who was also at Barclays at the time, started getting involved in NFTs. He had the same view, and he was investing in traditional collectibles like real art and wine, etc. And I was like, you should look at crypto. And then he actually found NFTs and was like, this is basically like inflation squared. You have the crypto angle and you have the collectible angle, and it's a nascent market that's just kicking off. So I was very skeptical at first. I didn't want to touch it. I was like, I just got my head around crypto. I'm not going to put my money into some JPEGs now. But I saw he was making a lot of money in just holding stuff and flipping stuff. So eventually I capitulated, and on the 14th of March 2021, I believe, I bought my first NFT, which was a one-on-one of super rare, and that's how I got in the game.
That's amazing. That's literally a month after I bought my first NFT. It's crazy to think that we were, in the internal Bloomberg chats talking about crypto, and fast forward a little over a year, and here we are now. So you buy your first NFT. It's a 101. You went for the art instead of the collectibles. What made you, go for art first?
Yeah, so I didn't really understand or believe in the whole Web3 idea, the whole collectible market. I just didn't really get it at first. And, this was a time when people were talking about CryptoPunks, and they were like, I don't know, 4 or 5 ETH at the time, wherever they were. And people were trying to spin the narrative, oh, this is like having a luxury good in the form of a profile picture. And I just never really thought that was a concept that would take off. But the art side of things, I understood. I was like, digital art's been around for a while. NFTs can be a medium for art, and there's a real market for art out there, and it's something that I've always had an interest in. So I just understood that a lot better, and I felt more comfortable with it. At the same time, you had this Beeple auction that was coming up at Christie's, and you had his 2 large sales earlier. So it just felt like that's the part of the market that had more momentum, and that's the reason why that's where I started. I think just because I actually understood it a bit better than collectibles. Obviously my view on collectibles changed as time went on, but to begin with, I didn't really believe in the whole collectibles thing at all, actually.
Interesting, because then you come to, what was it, late May, Bored Apes, start minting. You minted a bunch of them. What changed in your mind, and what happened after that?
Yeah, so I think the first thing that happened before this, I believe, was CryptoPunks going to Sotheby's. And that for me, I was like very skeptical on the whole punks thing for a long, long time. But when Sotheby's was like, okay, we're going to auction punks, I was like, okay, this is now a paradigm shift. This is a change. You have an institution that's been around for many, many decades, that's highly respected in the art world, basically now legitimizing this specific NFT collection. And then it was like everything that people were saying about this was one of the first Popovich project. This is one of the first ERC 71s. This is old. It's one of the first NFTs. It was like, now that makes sense because you have an auction house, a traditional auction house, who was exacerbating that narrative. So I bought, after that announcement, I bought a punk, and I was like, okay, maybe maybe this does have it does have some credence to it. But the apes, I minted 150 apes, and it wasn't really one of those things where I put a lot of thought into it. Like I actually had just quit Barclays then to move back to London, and I was just kind of like all over the place. My head was all over the place, and I saw they were minting. I saw it on Twitter, and I just thought, I took a look at the website. It was the first one where the website was done very professionally. It was the first thing actually that was marketed as a club, I believe. Like you had the CryptoPunks thing, but this was like the Bored Ape Yacht Club, and that I understood. I was like, yeah, I get the idea of being part of a members club and having exclusive benefits, all these things. I want to do that kind of stuff, so I understand why other people would want to. And they don't have any information on what it actually would be, but I was like, this is a cool concept. The website was just done so well, so professionally, and you could just feel there was something different about it. It had that different feel about it. So yeah, I went ahead and minted 150, and it was definitely like my first real true degen thing I've done in this space, because it was just like mint. So my wallet ran dry, and I actually ended up selling most of them over the next few days, which is the sad part of the story. But yeah, it was definitely an interesting time.
Yeah, what a time to look back on. You mentioned something. You said paradigm change as the punks got into Sotheby's. That to me tells me that maybe is Web3 really seeking validation from the traditional side of the world, and is that really what the ethos of the space is, or how do you kind of like balance that in your head? Because obviously Web3 participants are like, we don't need the old world, but for somebody that was established collector like yourself, you said, okay, it's when that old world institution added this project to the roster of offerings that it became something valid to me. Looking back at that time, do you still feel the same way? Like, what are your thoughts about traditional institutions being the validators of the space?
So it's a really interesting question, actually. I think things have changed. I think rewind back to March 2021, people were like, oh, if this Beeple auction goes really well, people are going to look at NFTs as a form of art. People were like, oh, if this artist gets onto Sotheby's, if this artist gets onto Christie's, they're now a legit artist. They're no longer just like a degen online artist. It was like, if this famous person buys any NFT, that validates NFTs. So I felt like back then, it was very much like we were looking for what we felt like we wanted back then was mainstream adoption. And in order for that to happen, you kind of do need validation from the traditional world. And I think those are the things that we used to get excited about back then. And it's funny because the NFT market has been around since 2017, I guess, even 2016. And, back then it really was just like almost a handful of people just online doing this stuff, and obviously started gathering momentum in 2020. But even up until, I would say, the end of the first half of 2021, I think we were looking for validation from the traditional market. It was like, at that point, it felt like, well, this is all fun, this is interesting, but it's very hypothetical. And it's very much like, will people really care about profile pictures? Will people really care about digital identity? Will people really understand digital ownership? It was all very very early concepts, and I think we did need that validation early on. You mentioned, is it against the spirit of Web3, against the ethos of Web3? And parts of it are, I think, and now I think that's changed. I think now that this boom has been around for about 18 months, and I know stuff's down a lot recently, but I know volumes are down a lot, but there's still hundreds of millions of dollars of volume going through. Like it's not small amounts. It's clear to me that this is not going away. It's clear to me that humans understand these concepts, that humans want to be involved in these kind of ecosystems, and it just plays into human nature very well, and also plays into the digitization of our lives very well. So I think now, because the space has become so big, we feel like we don't need validation from the traditional world anymore, because there's already enough money in the ecosystem to make it work. And actually, what's more important now is to get validation from within the Web3 ecosystem. If you're a creator or an artist selling NFTs, you want to actually target the Web3 guys. You don't want to target the traditional guys, because the Web3 guys will be the ones that will spend the bigger money. So I think that's changed actually over what really is a very short space of time. And I think that's just a testament to, how much these concepts that I just mentioned really will continue to grow and not govern our lives, but be a big part of our lives, I think.
Yeah, I think it's very interesting how, we thought it was going to be the mainstream traditional artists that are going to bring legitimacy to the space. But we've seen that crypto native artists being the most successful ones, people like Copy and them who have always been crypto artists, digital artists. And on that note, you yourself, late in last year, started minting work. Very interesting work. It appeals a lot to me because it's really thematic, I think, tying your Wall Street roots with being like an NFT degen. Were you always an artist? Is this something you were, hiding behind the Patagonia vest on the trading floor? Or was just collecting NFTs something that awoke in that artist inside of you? What was that process?
I've always been into drawing from quite a young age as a kid. And I think it's something that runs in my family. My family is very artistic. Like a lot of my cousins are very good at art. My brother's very good at art. And it's just been something that I've always enjoyed doing. Always had a creative side to me. But, like when you grow up and when you're a kid, and back in like the old version of the world, you never really think that's something you can actually make a career out or a living out of. And you're not really, I don't know, I kind of grew up in a world where I was like, okay, like what do I need to do to have a successful career and get a good job and work in a bank and that kind of stuff. It wasn't really like follow your dreams or follow your passions. And I wouldn't say art was ever really a passion per se. I think passion is a strong word, but I did like drawing and I was good at it at school. But from the ages of like 13 to 18, I spent a lot of time I was like an online degen in my teens before crypto. So there's no monetization of it. But I spent all my time online. I taught myself how to code. I had a deviant art profile. I was like very active in that community. As a teenager, I was spending time on IRC channels. It was like all that stuff I did back in the day, and I loved doing it. I really, really enjoyed it. And I guess when I turned 18 and I went to university, and I just moved on to other things as you do. Like I guess I kind of grew up in my eyes at the time, and I moved on. So when I came back to NFTs, the first thing I thought, having spent a few days getting on Twitter and going on Super and speaking to all these people, I was like, wow, this is just like deviant art days of 10, 15 years ago. It was just the same thing. And I did think about creating. I was like, should I do start creating stuff again? But I looked at everyone's art and I was just like, wow, like digital art has moved on so much since I used to do it. Since I used to I used to sit on Photoshop with my mouse drawing stuff because I didn't have enough pocket money to get like a stylus thing. It was just like, there was no iPads or anything back then, right? So I was just like, wow, people are so good. So I was just like, I'm not even going to try. It's going to be, there's no point trying because people have just been doing this for years and they're obviously going to be way better than me. But the way I got back into it was I was still at work and I was just doodling something one day when I was bored at work in a meeting, and was like a picture of the sky, which is like a skull with a hoodie, and drew like a GM on his hoodie. And I was like, yeah, that's kind of me right now. It's kind of me like degenning NFTs or whatever. That was the idea behind it. And for fun, I just decided to mint it. And someone bought that. I minted on Foundation. Someone bought that first piece for half an ETH, and I was like, oh, that's kind of fun. Like I felt quite happy that someone felt like they wanted to buy it. It wasn't meant to be something to make money. It wasn't meant to be like, let me try and be an artist. It's just like, I'm going to make this. If someone likes it, so oh, that's quite cool. Someone likes what I drew. So then I did another one a couple of weeks later. I just thought I'd carry on doing it because I really enjoyed doing it. And obviously you bought a piece of mine. I think it was either the third or the fourth piece. I think you may have even been at the first one ETH handle print on my art. But yeah, they slowly
I
started
think
to
so.
trade.
I was.
I think you were, right. I think they slowly started to trade higher and higher, and then I guess I just saw an opportunity because like the stuff that I was drawing to your point was like influenced by my life as like working as a trader in an investment bank, kind of like lineated with being an NFT and spending my time just trying to depict the hybridness in that. And I think a lot of people can relate to that. And, maybe just capture a niche or a feeling that I think a lot of people felt, which is one of the reasons why it became popular, I think. But yeah, that's how it started. That's how I got into it. And the last few months have been pretty insane. And I never in a million years would have expected it, to be honest with you. But I've been loving it.
It's been great to watch you from a distance, given that you're all the way over there. But obviously, like I said, it really appealed to me, right? And to think that character, which is now the Rekt Guy, and we'll talk more about that project in a little bit. But the fact that it was created while you were sitting at a bank and you were trading, distressed credit. I remember bidding on your piece, and my wife, she was like, "Why are you giving Ovie money?" And now, that piece, you've turned it into more like a mint pass for some other work that you've done and airdrops, and that's kind of want to touch on this next part of the conversation. Is you're a crypto native artist, in that you came to your art via NFTs. You've collected NFTs. You're now even launching a fund to collect NFTs. And so you understand the value delivery mechanism that an NFT can be beyond just, a pretty cool picture, image, video, or a sound, whatever that might be. But to me, you're one of the first artists who really has an understanding of, let's call it the market. And we spent a lot of time during these interviews talking about how that's, NFTs have changed the lives of the artist and given them an opportunity to monetize their work. But you've taken it a step further, I think, right? You've been able to say, hey, support me with my art, and this will be an opportunity for you to get access to more art in the future. And you've done a lot of airdrops, and it's created a lot of value. Just for example, the piece that I bought from you for 1 ETH has, given me like 50 ETH of value since in other pieces that you've airdropped. What was it about, your art that you said, okay, I'm going to turn this into like a mechanism rather than just, hey, you paid, a couple of ETH for this artwork and that's it. Like what was it in, your experience? Was it the Wall Street? Was it the collecting? What really helped you like come up with that idea?
So I genuinely never had the intention to have those utilities and do the airdrop thing. And I kind of just like stumbled on it really. One thing that I was really impressed by for a lot of last year is how Yuga Labs created all the value they did. And I think if I was to break it down very simply, I think what they did was they made their collectors a lot of money. And when they did that, they fostered this like unbelievable brand loyalty, which allowed them to then sell more things to new collectors who wanted to get into the ecosystem. And a perfect example of that is the Apes. They made whatever $2 million from $1.5 million from the Ape sale, but then they made $100 million from the Mutant sale because by that point everyone wanted to be in the ecosystem, right? And because they were seeing so much how well the Apes were doing. So I was like, okay, these guys have just nailed the idea of like if you take the collector creator relationship or the B2C relationship one step further than just, okay, you buy from me and you have a product, to you buy from me and you have a product and I'm going to help you make money on your product. And in return, you'll go tell your friends about how much money you're making and they'll want to come in at a higher entry point. Kind of like progressive funding rounds, if you like, for startups and stuff. But and so I recognize that. I was like, that's what those guys have done. Like, that's the reason why it's so successful. Like, yeah, it was a cool collection. Yeah, it's like a really cool brand, great idea. But they're very good at playing that game, very, very good at playing that game. And I think maybe they didn't know how big it was really going to be, but they saw the opportunity as it developed and they seized it. And for me, like, I never really planned to do airdrops and stuff. It was like, I was just like, look, I'm just going to do art and sell one-of-ones or whatever. And then I made the Red Light District, which is the utility piece you're talking about, which gives you free airdrops every month. I made that and I was like, I love this piece so much. I just want more than one person to have it. So I made it into edition, sold to lots of people. And I did like the first airdrop I did, which was a piece called F Cash Grabs. And it was just like something I just randomly scribbled. I was never really going to airdrop it or sell it. But my brother-in-law saw it. He's like, that's really cool. You should sell that piece. And I was like, I didn't love it that much. I was like, you know what I'll do? I'll just airdrop it to all these holders. So I airdropped to everyone. And the RLD piece, the original piece, was trading at like 0.5 ETH. And this new piece was trading at like 0.2 ETH. And it stayed there, it kept trading there. So I was like, wow, like this is pretty insane. Like people just got like a 50% dividend payment, if you like. That's how I view it if I'm putting my traditional finance lens on. And I was like, this is pretty interesting. And I think I didn't go out there shilling it or pitching it, but I was like, the market always sort of figures these things out. So I think people realized that, and then the RLD started going higher. And I was like, yeah, look, I'm just going to do an airdrop every month until I die is a promise I've made. Because I knew people would look at it that way and be like, okay, now this thing actually should be worth way more, because if I really like the art and I want to hold this thing for 5-10 years, my dividend yield is going to be huge on this thing. So that's the way I saw it. Like this is how I would think about it as a collector or as an investor. And I think enough people saw it the same way I did. And look, a lot of the collectors and people that I have in that collection are people that I used to work with or clients of mine, etc. I think I've had that's been part of the success I've had. Is like I feel like I have a niche collector base of people that I actually know in real life who aren't really involved in NFTs, and I'd be like, look, you should just get involved in this because this is interesting. And yeah, that's how it basically developed. But it was just like, it's one of those things, like I never really planned it on the outset, but as something happened, the next thing happened, I was like, well, this is an opportunity. I can now make something of this. And I think that's really the way I've operated in this whole space. I've never really had a game plan. But when something's worked, I've seen it as an opportunity to just like attack it and go really big on it. And I think that's just the nature of crypto as a whole, to be honest with you. Like when something good happens, it goes like really good very quickly. And the same way the other way around as well.
For sure, as we're seeing it today, or recently this week. I want to grab on that point you made about the flexibility of crypto, right? And let's say we're having this conversation with like a big corporation, big brand wants to come into Web3, right? You kind of like hit gold with your idea of delivering art every month, and you'll be able to make that transition. Obviously, it's been good for you as well. You collect royalties every time those pieces sell. So it's a stream of income. If we're having this conversation with like a big conglomerate, what would you pitch them as? What is the value proposition of NFTs beyond being able to sell, like a spinning logo up front? What really is the value pitch here for the long term?
As it stands, NFTs have been used as a medium for art and collectibles. They're branching out into like the metaverse and gaming, all that kind of stuff. But I think those things will take a very long time to build. And I think mass adoption of this metaverse concept will take a lot longer than we think it will. Something that I think is more important is the efficiency in which it speeds up processes. So if we take art as an example, let's say you go to Sotheby's and you bid on a piece, they don't ask you for the money up front. When the auction is done, like you don't have to pay them. If you don't pay them, then there's this issue. How does the artist get paid? And then if that piece resells, like how does the artist get their royalty? Is there a royalty? Like it's all like inefficient, right? It's all very confusing. And with NFT technology, it's like, cool, when you bid something, you bid on chain to the capital at that moment in time. And you can write into the smart contracts royalties every time it resells and all that kind of stuff. So for me, like the reason why I'm so bullish on it as a technology, and it's important to distinguish that me being bullish on NFTs as a technology does not necessarily equate to I'm bullish on all these NFTs that exist right now. I think they're two different things. But it's something. It speeds up efficiency and processes so much. Like imagine, like think about buying a car, right? When you buy a car, you don't know like the history, service history of the car. When you buy it and you have ownership of it, you have to like fill out this form, send it to the government, and they send it back to you, and it's like it's so much hassle, right? But if your car was represented, it was an NFT that represented the physical item. When you bought it, that transaction could be on chain. It's like, okay, we know this person bought it at this date on a public blockchain. When you like service, instead of having a physical logbook, it can be like, here's the service history of this car on chain. And when you sell it and transact, you do the transaction on chain, and it's just like a a few second transaction, and it's recognizable by everyone. And that's the sort of thing I'm really bullish on. I think that's the real value prop, like applying this technology to real life processes that are so inefficient right now, and things that you and I and everyone probably get frustrated at. And you just think, wow, like if this was just like on chain or an NFT or whatever, like the idea of digital ownership, I think, can extend to representing physical ownership and having information on a public ledger which is actually transparent, that everyone can see, that's public. And I think that's the real value prop. And it's a big task, but whoever is able to nail that, something like cars or houses or these things that are very bureaucratic and take a lot of time to transact in, I think that's like the real opportunity here for that technology, and really for governments as well. And in a time when things are so uncertain about the global economy, like if I was government, like that's where I want to be focusing on right now. If I don't have tools to lower interest rates, but I need to, use some kind of fiscal policy or policy to boost productivity, like that's where I'd be focusing on right now.
What a contrast, right? Like your previous life is you're trading distressed credit, loans take 30 to 45 days to settle, sourcing the paper takes forever. Like I hear my wife's frustration sometimes when she's having calls, and now you go from that to this like almost instantaneous world. And obviously people are like, well, it takes 5 minutes for a transaction to settle, but it's still much faster from the experiences that we saw. I was in equities. It still took at least 2 days. Structured products took like 5 days, 7 days. And it's just super interesting how I think people that have that background see this new technology. And I was a skeptic too for the longest time, by the way. But once you study it, you're like, oh my God, wait a minute. Like this is huge beyond just the pixels and the JPEGs and the ape cartoons. It's always kind of like shocked me. Every morning I wake up, I'm like, wow, it sounds funny, but we can change the world in a way. Touching again on your Wall Street experience, you mentioned at the beginning that you drew a lot of parallels between trading distressed credit to trading NFTs early on. Could you expand a little bit on that?
Distress and high yield credit, it's an over-the-counter market. So you can't just go to an exchange like you can with your ETH or with any equity or foreign exchange where you go like, okay, I want to sell it, you get a price, you sell it. You actually have to find a buyer for it. Or if you want to buy something, you actually have to find the other side of the trade. It's over the counter. And a lot of the time we were, making phone calls to clients, trying to figure out where people cared to buy or sell things. That was the nature of that market. And the other thing about it was that it was extremely volatile. Like we were trading companies' credits that would, could go to zero in the space of a day or a couple of days if it turned out they didn't have any cash left or whatever. Or the exact opposite could happen. Something very cheap could rally a lot very aggressively, and the price moves would be very volatile. They would just gap. There would be like, I don't know, like 20, 30, 40, 50, 60% moves, but just like gapping moves with no liquidity in between, and just crazy price action. So it was a volatile market that was illiquid, and I think that's the best way to describe the NFT market. Like it's a volatile market that's illiquid. Sometimes I'm actually amazed by how liquid the NFT market is, but the concepts are the same. It's like if you want, and this is something I think most newbies misunderstand, because people talk about floor prices. Oh, the floor price is a 10 ETH, I can just sell it to 10 ETH whenever I want. It's like, no, that's not the case, because that's just one side of the market. That's the ask price, as we would call it. That's the price that you can actually buy at, not the price you can sell at. And that's a basic concept of market making or understanding, like bid offer, that you obviously get very familiar with in traditional finance, that I think people were not so familiar with NFTs, and maybe some people fell over on. But yeah, it was almost like the same thing. You're looking for the same things, but the advantage for this was two advantages for this. Number one, you went from trading a market where people have been doing it for literally decades and everyone's very good at their jobs, to doing a market where most people in the market aren't from a traditional finance background, and it's all very new to them. So you kind of have an edge or an advantage. And the second thing was, because it's all on chain, all the data is public. So when we used to trade high order distress, like you would try and put together data points, you would see prices, but you wouldn't know like the buy interest and the sell interest, all these kinds of things that you get in the equity market, for example. But you had all this data in the NFT market, so it was just kind of like this amazing opportunity. And trading NFTs in 2021 was the most unreal opportunity, because it was kind of like a mix of the credit and equity markets, where you had all the data and information, but it traded like the credit market. So you had the margin of a credit market, and it was like those two things combined. And that's what I thought was just like the most amazing thing. And I just, instead of sitting there on Bloomberg, chat somebody like, you're on Discord chatting to someone, and you're like on OpenSea listing it. It was like, honestly, I always felt like I was sending out price runs and stuff. It was kind of funny, but it really, really felt the same. It really felt like the same thing, but instead of trading bonds, I was trading pictures of monkeys, basically. So
it's incredible, huh? And so you felt like you had an edge over the other market participants, given your experience.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's changed now. There's a lot of tools, but in 2021, I felt like I had an edge. Yeah, I really did. Like, I felt like people were slow to price things in, people were slow to react, and I think people didn't read data. There were no tools or analytics then, and that's part of the market that's changed a lot. Now there's like dozens of analytical platforms, and humans are smart. Like the best traders, and a lot of people aren't from TradFi backgrounds in this industry, and they're very smart, and they've cracked it, because I think trading is something that probably comes from more of like an instinctual thing necessarily, rather than like a training thing, but it's also an experience thing as well. But I don't really feel like I have much of an edge now in trading NFTs, because it's just become so advanced and you really have to sit there and be in the weeds. But at the beginning it did feel like that for sure.
It always struck me as interesting on the trading floors, where like some of the best traders were like English majors or music majors, really definitely not the finance or accounting majors. Okay, so your partner Armando, you mentioned him before. You guys built a large collection. You were able to get ape exposure again after selling your 150 apes for like an ETH each, before watching them go to like 120 ETH. Now you guys have a fund. You both have traditional finance backgrounds. How big has collaboration seems to be a big part of the space. What has your experience been? Obviously, he's a good friend of yours, but you also have other people in your circle that you collaborate a lot with. In a world where, it seems like, crypto, you always hear like single names and just like one or two people. You seem to have found a lot of success in also partner up with the right kind of people. And Web3, obviously, a big part of it is enabling collaboration across borders and decentralized and everything like that. Can you speak to your experience in that regards?
Yeah, it's made the biggest difference, I think. And if I was doing this by myself, no chance, whatever. And it's tough as well, because you get volatile price action, you get days like today, or weeks like last week, and you need to speak to people about it. And doing it by yourself, I think, is very tough. I think, again, to draw another parallel to my previous trading career, that was very much a relationship business. It was like, if you knew the right guys, you would get the right information, the right color, and then you would use that to make your to help you with your decision making. You would accumulate as much data points as you can, and be okay, now I know what decision to make. And I think this is no different. And working with Mando has been great. He joined Barclays a year after I did, and we sat next to each other when we were just junior traders. So we've been through everything together, and he's become one of my best friends. So I'm very fortunate to have someone like that where I can completely trust them. And whether the money goes up or down, it doesn't really come between us, or it's never an issue for us. So we're very lucky to have each other in the space where we can divide and conquer, basically. But yeah, we've got to know a lot of people in this space, and whether it's through collaborations or just chatting, but I think it's absolutely necessary. It really is an information game. It's an information game. And that's not to say there's a lot of accusations of inside information, or this guy had the color and this guy didn't, all this kind of stuff. It's I get it, it's fine, but at the end of the day, information gets out, and it's out there, and it's important to know the right people. And it's not just because this person knew that Yuga Labs is going to buy this project, so we should buy it. It's more about this is where trends are going. This is where the market is going. And look, if you spoke to the right people over the last few weeks, you would have had a good handle on where the market is going. Like you would have heard about, you would have gone smarter on these potential liquidation events, smarter on things like Luna and things like Celsius, etc. So it's the most important thing, and speaking to as many people as possible, because the way that I view it is like, I don't think I'm the smartest person in the world, and I always like, my dad always told me, try and surround yourself with people who are smarter than you. And that's definitely my mantra. So I just try and surround myself with people smarter than me, and I can learn as much from them. And my thing is like, just keep learning, like try and learn as much as possible all the time, and not getting like, a lot of people very easily get egotistical in this market, where you get, your head can blow up because you can make a lot of big money very quickly. But I think it's important to stay humble and have a steady state of like wanting to continue to learn, because you've seen some of the biggest names in the last couple of days, being brought down, and it just goes to show that like everyone has a capacity to learn. And I think that's the most important thing.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think, for me, being able to sit here and interview smart people like yourself and all the guests we've had, been just a really good learning opportunity as well. And I hope that, those who are watching today can also feel similar learning from you. You've been a thought leader in the space. You write threads, helping people think about downturns, about market position sizing. Always found that those exercises for myself, when I do it, is very didactic. Like I probably learn more than what I teach. Do you feel the same way, or is what's your biggest takeaway from the threads, other than your follower count, which just seems to go ballistic every time you tweet something smart?
So I've always been a fan of writing stuff down, like writing out my thoughts, because I think it's something that I need to do, because I'm actually a very chaotic and hectic person. I'm just like, my mind's usually all over the place. I'm just doing lots of different things and there's no structure. And so sometimes I just need to and that's what it's like on a trading floor, by the way. Like on a trading floor, you're bidding one bond to this guy, you're offering one bond to that guy, and then your wife's calling you on your phone, and then someone's bringing you a lunch, and you're multitasking the whole time. And that's just like status quo for you as a trader. And I've somehow brought that into this world, and I'm always doing the different things. So I always found it helped, whenever I had a bad period at work and I was losing money, I was like, okay, let me just step away from all this chaos and sit down and write out my thoughts, or write out what went well, what went bad, and what I can do to fix it. And that always helped me to recollect and gather my thoughts. So with regards to the threads, I've actually found them helpful for myself, because I know they're written as, here's some advice for you if you find it helpful, but it's actually advice that I'm telling myself to do each time. And it's like, okay, I've been in this situation before. What helped last time? Here's what helped me last time. And as I write it, I'm like, okay, yeah, I have to remember to do this. Yeah, that makes sense. This is what I should do. But it's written in a format that's presentable for others to read and take advice from. And it's like, yeah, I'm really glad and I'm really happy if it helps anyone. And it certainly helps me to write out my thoughts and refresh my things, because this world can get very hectic and chaotic too. And there's a lot of things going on. And I really do believe in just taking yourself out of the bubble sometimes, and just looking at things with a fresh pair of glasses, basically. I think is very important, especially with regards to trading and investing. You can get your decision making get emotional, you can get attached to things, and sometimes you need to just strip yourself out, come back to it, and be like, okay, what is actually, if I didn't have any risk in my book right now, what would I be doing? Like, what's the right trade? And then forget about the money you've lost or money you've made. Just forget about that. What's the right trade right now? And approach it from that angle. And doesn't apply just to trading or investing, it applies to everything, I think.
No, and I'm sure a lot of community members really appreciate having your perspective. Having worn the distressed credit trader hat, the early collector hat, the minted Apes and sold them hat, the artist hat, and now most recently you launched a project with your team, Rekt Guy. You made some interesting choices upon launch. I love them. I have a bunch of them. Part of them because I have that 101 and all those airdrops. The art's pretty cool, and I will invite everybody to go look it up. But you pretty much gave the whole project away for free. And then you made the license CCO, which is Creative Commons license. Pretty much anybody can use the art, without having to pay for it. What were the decision drivers that led you to that? And looking back at it, it's only been a couple of weeks, but obviously a lot's happened in the market. What are your immediate takeaways from those decisions?
I wanted to not do something where I extracted value from the system. And going back to earlier in the conversation, I was talking about people who are successful, people who make their collectors money. Like that's kind of like the NFT Web3 game. You have art, etc., but to do well in NFTs, I think you have to. People will want to buy your stuff if they think they can make money from it. That's just to put it in very simple terms. So I didn't want to sell them because I didn't want to extract. I was like, well, people are going to be paying for it, and they're going to have expectations, and then I have to like deliver on them, and it just changes people. It changes the thing, right? So it's like, well, if I give it away for free, then there's no expectation, and if I do deliver on it, then people will be like, oh wow, this could be good, and it creates value. It's like that's a genuine value creation. If I create something and I give it away for free and it has value to it, then that's value that's been created as a result of like my time that I've spent creating it. And so I view that as like, okay, this mean that I'll be contributing to this ecosystem positively. I'll be contributing to like my own art ecosystem positively. And that's how I viewed it. I was like, let me just play it differently. And I know Goblin Town came with a free mint like just before, and we were always going to be, we'd announced we were going to be free mint weeks and months before. So I was kind of like bummed that they picked us to it. But that was just like, that was my thing. And I was like, and then the best part about it was like, my incentives are now then aligned with the collectors. It's like, I will make money on royalties if this trades. This thing will trade if I make it successful. If I make it successful, then collectors benefit. So I'm not doing something where I just extract a bunch of money out of the system on day zero, and then people are depending on me to go do stuff. I've given something to people for free, and now for me to do well, I need to do well for the project, which means everyone's incentives are aligned. So that was my thought process behind that, making it free. With regard to CCO, like I didn't get it at first. When I first came to it, I was like, why do you want to give up your IP? And like, why would people care? But I really get it now, especially if you're trying to create a new project or a new brand. The best thing to happen for you is loads of people creating derivatives for it, because I genuinely believe it upstreams value to the original collection. And CCO means that you can create derivatives or copy the art, use it in whatever way you want, even for commercial use, without my consent. And I encourage everyone to do that because number one is if people go out there and make money off stuff that I've created, like that's great. I'm happy for them. Like that's awesome to know that people can go out there and make money off my stuff. Like I love to hear that. And the second thing is that the more that people do that, I think it's free marketing for me, right? It's free marketing because someone else is going to see it. Someone else is going to see it. Another person is going to see it. They're like, what's this? And they're like, I think if you approach CCO with like I'm all for CCO and go ahead and do what we want, people will pay respect to it. And there's been a ton of derivatives, and I think every single derivative that's been made, the artist has like airdrop me the derivative, and the artist is like, I've never said I want airdrop. I never said I want any credit or anything, but everyone's always said like airdrop something to me. Everyone said this is inspired by Rekt Guy, and it's just been more and more advertising that helps this. It helps it become viral, and that's what I think is it's a marketing thing, and it's also like a really good thing, and also like it just shows that you're not really insecure about what you're doing. It's like, I don't care, just go ahead and do what you want. Like I'm not insecure about retaining this thing and being possessive about this thing, like whatever. Like I think it has the ability to be successful without feeling the need to ring fence my IP. That's the message you're sending out to people. It's like a message of confidence. It's a BDE kind of feeling, for lack of a better term. But I think that's the idea behind it, and I think more projects will be like that. And I think that's another thing that will change the way copyright laws and etc. will work, because people will realize you don't actually need to copyright something for people to want to buy it. You actually want to, or for you to like make more money out of it, whatever it is. Like for people copying your thing just makes it even more exclusive, even more desired, even more legitimized, validated, all those things. And I think it's something that the traditional world is very slow to, and it's definitely a disruptive disruptive mechanism that is going to grow further and further, I think.
Yeah, the power of the meme, right? Memes are not just like the funny pictures, but the ability for an idea to go viral and to get reproduced and for people to see it and, like you said, accrue value. Kind of feel like almost we could have a little bit of a advice for non-crypto natives coming into the NFT space. You said, don't be a value extractor, and think of ways in which your brand, your IP can be freely distributed by your audience, which almost turns the, call it Web 2 model or the traditional IP model in its head, right? People think I have this very valuable IP, you should pay me for it. I think that's one of the most interesting things that come out of this whole NFT Web3 world. It took me a while to get it as well, as far as like the IP. Like, I don't want anybody using something that I paid for, but as I think of, the most well-known images in the world, nobody's getting paid for them. And yeah, no, it's super, super interesting. Rekt Guy, again, your art always been very thematic. The market's absolutely wrecked right now, not just crypto spot markets, but NFT markets volumes are anemic, back to levels not seen 12 months ago. A lot of collections down, 80, 90% down from the highs in either dollar or ether terms. What are you thinking right now? Let's go back to putting your trader hat on now, even a fund manager hat. What are your thoughts in the market, short term, medium term? How are you positioning? What's going on through OSF's mind?
Yeah, look, I'm believe it or not, I'm someone that's traditionally been very bearish in terms of the way I've traded. In my early days of trading, I just traded a handful of companies that ended up defaulting. So it happened early in my career. I lost a lot of money on it as well early in my career. So it made me very bearish as a trader, and it made me always look at things in a glass half empty perspective. And I was like, well, this guy doesn't have this cash flow, and this could break down if you take away this contract, whatever. That's how you should look at things. And I had a good career. Like I had good years. I made a lot of money for the bank, and I made some good money on shorts. But when I came to the US, I traded in New York for 3 years, and I was like, there are people who made so much money year in, year out consistently. And then they had one blow up and they made money year in, year out consistently. And I looked at the time, this is when I really realized things in COVID. I made I blew up, then I made it all back, and I made really good money shorting stuff. And, stuff like Hertz, I shorted Hertz into default, and I made, that kind of like made my year. I was like, yeah, I made some good money, but I was like, wow, these people have made like 2-3 times as much money than me. How have they done it? And it was really just as simple as, and they weren't the smartest people in the world, but it was really just as simple as just like buying dip. It's like people are just like, I'm just going to buy it because the price is low and things are going to be fine. The world's going to be fine. I just have to not get stopped out and ride it out and hold it out. And obviously, indeed, that's been the best strategy for the last 10 years. Of course, for the last 10 years, we've lived in an era of QE and low rates and, like risk assets going crazy as a result of it. And we're now entering a different territory. But I think what I've come to learn is like things get bad for a reason. The reasons are bad, they cause low prices. But if you zoom out and over time, things recover because humans eventually figure it out, whatever it is. And so I think right now we're in that moment in time. Like, I think equities are down, tech stocks are down 75, 85%. Crypto majors are down 70% plus, and alts are down like 99% in most cases. Like stuff is down a lot. So if you're sitting here and you're like, I believe in Ethereum, I believe in NFTs, I believe in the stuff, then over a 1, 2, 3 year time horizon, you've just been gifted an incredible buying opportunity, in my opinion, because of central banks messing up the world. It's caused this incredible buying opportunity, whether it's in equities, whether it's in crypto, but particularly crypto, because the difference about crypto to other things is that you have all the macro stuff, but you do have this rising digital trend. You have this efficiency benefits that I talked about, very clear use cases. And every year that goes by in crypto, there are more and more use cases and greater adoption. And think about how much building and developing there's going on in the space and how much money is going into it. Like, it's going to make it, it's going to work. And I was always like, damn, I wish I was early into crypto. And, here I am now sitting there with the Ether 2017 prices. And, I've always like been the person where I was short into sell-offs, and then I usually got hurt on the way back up a little bit because I was never disciplined enough to cover my shorts. But I was never the person where I averaged down into sell-offs and bought the dip and then made all the money on the way back up. So after 2020, I promised myself, I was like, I'm going to buy the next dip. I'm not going to think about any reasons why not. I'm just going to do it. And we had that dip in 2021, and I did it, and like I made good money. Like that gave me the ability to quit my job and do this full time. And it's happened again, and it's like, I know stuff is really bad. The trader and investor in me is like, I should be max short so many different things. I know it's horrific, like I get it, but I'm doing everything I can in my head to be like, I know it's bad, but that results in low prices, which won't be low forever, and it creates a big buying opportunity. And instead of trying to trade the market, I'm just going to buy and wait for things to get better. Because people who say I'm going to buy once the market's better, it's like, cool, the market's better, then prices are higher. It's like, I'm going to buy when the market's bad, and I'll probably sell it to you guys when the market's better. And that's how I'm thinking about it right now. So I've been averaging down on ETH. I have my limit orders set all the way down to like 500. And I'm kind of excited. Like, obviously, I still own a lot of it. I took a lot of money out in April, but I still own a lot of NFTs and crypto and stuff. So I've taken big hits, but I'm excited. Like, I kind of want things to go lower because I'm excited for this to be one of the best buying opportunities. And this is the first time in my life ever where I've been able to put in meaningful capital into the actual dip and be in a position to do that. So I'm excited to see how it comes out. Like, I'm not bullish on the market at all, but I think it's a great time to buy. And I think it's important to understand that they're two different things. And that's my point there.
No, and then I feel the same way. As somebody who's macro and then equity derivatives, you're always looking for, how I can make money on the downside and negative, and like what can go wrong because everybody's so positive. Maybe it's just being a contrarian for some reason by nature. And now NFTs, crypto, you're like, all right, well, this is technology that has potential to disrupt a lot. Let's take advantage of the opportunities. You sound like you're loving trading crypto. Do you miss Wall Street at all?
That's a really good question. Up until now, I was like, don't miss it at all. Like, I love this stuff. The thing that I loved about Wall Street was trading volatile markets. And when you're a sell-side trader, you're asked to make prices all day long. Someone's like, where can you bid these bonds? Where can you offer these bonds? And although that part of the job gets frustrating sometimes, I do love it. I do love market making. I do love just sitting in the seat, making prices and like trading stuff, and putting on really interesting trades. And like trading through COVID was like one of the most amazing times to trade. And this is the first time with all this fall, I was like, oh man, I wish I was back in the seat, being able to make prices on this stuff and trade stuff. And this is the first time I'm kind of missing it, because when you're like on the other side where we are now, and you're just kind of sitting there, it's like, well, all I'm really doing is like, when it hits new lows, my orders get hit, and I'm just kind of like sitting around, not doing much. Whereas I'd really love to be in a trading seat right now, market making, and just you're in the action when you're on Wall Street. You're right in the thick of it. You're in the action, and I think that's the part of it that I miss. Whereas now I feel like I'm a little bit on the outside and not so much in the action. And I would say that's the part that I miss the most. That I've definitely been feeling it the last few days.
So funny. Same. My wife's computer is behind me, and like, something she'll leave Bloomberg up, and I just jump on it. I'm checking all the stuff that I used to check and charting, and for sure it's weird. Sell-offs make me miss being on the floor. Just to close it out, obviously crypto has opened up a lot of opportunities, but more than the monetary sense, it sounds like obviously different areas of who you are, your personality, your talents. I guess your advice or comments to people who might be on the fence about, forget about buying crypto, but learning, understanding like what's in it for them, that, as a former skeptic, how would you actually, go back to yourself 4 years ago? What would you tell them today?
Yeah, look, I would say entering Web3, if you use a Web3 umbrella, it's kind of like, it does feel like restarting the world a little bit. It's like you enter this world where there's no preconception, there's no like narratives that have been written, there's nothing like that. It's like a fresh new world, it's like a clean slate, and it really allows anyone to come in and be whoever they want to be. And Web3 can be big, it can be developer, artist, like creator, podcast. There's so many different things you can do within the space, like literally everything. And it feels like you just feel like you're in this new world of amazing things that are happening. And I genuinely believe everyone can find their place in Web3. And when you're in it, when you're on the outside, you don't understand what's going on. You read, like, traditional media is horrible at reporting these things, and you think, oh, this is money laundering or scams or this kind of stuff. But I would really, really advise people to spend some time on NFT Twitter, or spend some time listening to things like these, or other podcasts, or like reading literature that actual Web3 people put out, to understand like what this whole community is about. And it's not like about money or stuff. It's like about people who genuinely feel like they're contributing something to the world or changing the world from a technological standpoint. And I tell this to my friends all the time. I actually tell this to my wife all the time. She hates me for saying it, but it's like, I always say, I can imagine this is what like Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk felt like during the dot-com bubble, when they just like was like, wow, this is such an amazing thing that's going to change the world. And that's how we really feel about this space sometimes. Like, obviously not for the last few weeks, but when things are going on, that's how you feel. Like, wow, this is like when the cog's turning, like this is going to change the world. So I'd really, really invite people to give it a chance and spend some time learning about it. And there's so much literature on Twitter, not just the tweets themselves, but people will write blog posts and stuff which explains the concepts of it. But just also spend some time engaging with people. Like people, this is a great community. I've made some of my best friends in this community. I actually met you through this before I even knew you at Barclays. And coming from someone who was a skeptic for 4 or 5 years, give it a chance. I forced myself to give it a chance. I forced myself to be open-minded, and it changed my life. So I would really, really highly encourage anyone who's on the fence to just give it a chance and put your skepticism aside and try and be open-minded, because I do think it's something that will continue to change our lives.
That's awesome. And thank you so much for being here with us today. It's been quite the conversation. I'm really excited to have had it, especially in such a tough week for the markets. Obviously, Web3 is very, very uplifting for people that have been involved, artists, collectors, creators. You've worn all those hats. Obviously, you transitioned very well from Wall Street to where you are now, thought leader in the space. I'll invite folks to follow you on Twitter, at OSF_NFT. You also have your Discord channel for your different projects. Please give Ovie a follow, reach out if you have any questions. He's the friendliest guy out there. Thank you, Ovie, very, very much.
Yeah, thanks, Sergio, for having me. It was an absolute pleasure. I'm glad we did this.
Awesome. Well, I look forward to seeing you at NFT NYC and all the crazy conferences around the world. And thanks, everybody, for tuning in today to Raul Powell's Adventure in Crypto. I'm Sergio Silva, sitting in today on this beautiful, beautiful Fed Wednesday in New York City. Thank you very much. We'll see you all later.
Hey, visionaries. Thank you for tuning in. For more free crypto content like this, head over to realvision.com/crypto. You'll get early access to the most brilliant minds in the space to cut through the noise, get in-depth analysis, and get you ahead of the curve with unbiased insights.